Hello and welcome back to Wellywood Wargaming. My name is Damon, and in this episode we're going to be looking at the top 5 best and worst things about Necromunda by Games Workshop. Now, if you're familiar with any of my other videos, you'll know that I cover Necromunda in a lot of depth, I suppose, but I thought I'd take it right back to the sort of the basics in these last few videos and just give you an overview of how I feel the good and the bad are in the current iteration of the game. Now, I've been playing since '95, which is quite a long time now, I suppose, and the game has evolved and changed a hell of a lot over the years. Of course, the modern iteration of the game came out in 2018, I believe, or 17, I'm not actually sure, and things have moved very, very swiftly, and progressed a lot. And in that time, I've had the opportunity to play hundreds and hundreds of games, I imagine. I'm not sure exactly what the game count is now, but it's quite a few. But I think I'm able to give you a real sort of decent spin on what I think the strong points are and the not so strong points are in this current game system. So for those of you that are looking at getting into this game for the first time, into Necromunda for the first time, and you've been lurking on the periphery, this might be good for you because it might either put you off or actually sell you the game. And for those of you veterans out there, I'm sure that you might disagree or agree with some of my comments. Please do, comment down below if not, and if you do want to have a discussion about it, then please do comment down below. I welcome that very much. But let's get straight into it anyway. I'm going to start with the top 5 best things about Necromunda's current iteration. And the first thing I'm going to be talking about here is the setting and the lore. I do think that the current setting of Necromunda, in fact, Necromunda in general has always had such a rich and incredibly interesting and intricate lore around it. Now, Necromunda is based in the 40k universe. However, what sets it apart from other games is that it's very much human. It's very much the little people. It's not the big military sort of enterprises that you get in 40k. It's very much the local people of Necromunda battling it out over with just stub guns and eating rat burgers and stuff. And I do find that the lore has always been particularly rich and really, really nice to get into. And there are so many novels and things that you can read as well that go alongside Necromunda just to enrich that experience as well. But the lore and the setting, very, very unique within the 40k universe, but still has that grimdark and nasty, grimy, dirty sort of vibe going through it as well. So yeah, that's the setting and the lore. I think that's certainly right up there among the top reasons to play the game. I think it's fantastic. The next thing, of course, are the miniatures. The miniatures, I would say, current day miniatures anyway, are some of, if not the best miniatures that Games Workshop currently produce, bar maybe Warcry at the moment. But I would say that the miniatures are particularly strong. The sculpts have always been excellent since they started releasing them again in 2018. The original sculpts back in '95 were pretty great as well, actually, and they still have sort of retro appeal. If you can get them off eBay, the old metal versions of Necromunda gangs and whatnot, if you can get them, they actually do kind of slot in quite well and fit with some of the new miniatures, certainly the Escher ones and a couple of others as well. But the aesthetic and the look of the miniatures is just so cool. If you're into Mad Max and 40k and a few other things, then this is going to sort of check every box for you, really. Also, you've got Forge World producing some of the sort of dramatis personae and special characters and hangers-on and brutes and pets and all sorts of other stuff for the game. Yes, it's quite expensive particularly if you live in Australia and New Zealand, but just having the sort of wealth of Forge World miniatures that are so intricately sculpted and well put together, it really is a painter's and modeler's dream, I would say. So the miniatures, the lore and the setting are all incredibly important here. The next thing, of course, is just that it's hobby heaven. I would say that Necromunda is by far more of a hobbyist's dream than any other current Games Workshop system, particularly because we have terrain and scenery. So you can make terrain and scenery, industrial stuff out of pots and pans and anything you find in your kitchen, in your bin, in your recycling cupboard, whatever. There are so many videos out there on YouTube that you can watch that will make anything into a huge building that is playable in Necromunda. So it really is a sort of hobbyist's dream, I would say. And if you're old enough to remember Blue Peter back in the day and using sticky back plastic, you'll probably have a bit of a head start on some of the terrain and scenery building in anyway. So Not to mention, of course, we have got multiple amazing kits, really, really finely detailed plastic kits that Games Workshop has produced to complement that as well. So if you don't want to make it out of your rubbish at home, then of course you can use the plastic kits that come with the actual game as well. Either way, it's just an absolute hobbyist's dream, I would say, and not to mention, of course, the conversions and kit bashing that everybody in the community currently does with Necromunda. It just gives you so much scope to be able to create your own narrative and your own type of gang and character and stuff as well. So hobby heaven, that's something as well. The next thing I want to talk about is the campaign systems and the development as well. So something that's unique in Necromunda and something that's particularly rich and always has been actually is the way that your gangers progress. They get new equipment, they get injuries, and they get experience and level up in ways that are far sort of more in-depth than many of the other Games Workshop systems. You know, if you played Mordheim and Necromunda back in the day, then of course things are very much the same, very much similar now. But the development is definitely something that's a real strong point about Necromunda, I would say. Having gangers doing heroic stuff, you know, having a Juve kill a Goliath leader with just nothing but a knife. These are the sort of stories that really, really engage you and keep you playing the game and keep you coming back to it as well. So the campaign systems are also pretty good. You've got several different types of campaign systems now, and you can pretty much pick and choose bits of each of the campaigns to make and build your own sort of campaign as well. So it really is very customizable, and the amount of depth that you can go into with the sort of narrative is fantastic as well. The last thing that I want to talk about, the last sort of good point, now we're on number 5, is the ongoing support from Games Workshop. I'm sort of bowled over at how Games Workshop has kept so much sort of vehement support for the game. I think part of it is down to the community being so rich and so vocal as well about what they want and what they need. But Games Workshop has gone far and above my expectations in keeping the support coming for Necromunda, which is fantastic. So hats off to Games Workshop for this. But just continuously releasing Forge World stuff and new books, new content constantly, not to mention White Dwarf articles and all sorts of other stuff. It really does keep the game in an excellent position, and it doesn't look like it's going anywhere anytime soon. So the popularity out there in the community is massive, you know, and my videos alone get lots of attention. So it goes to show that if I'm just talking into my phone camera about Necromunda and people are liking it, then there's certainly a lot of people out there that actually enjoy Necromunda content in general. So those are the 5 best things that I would say are the main sort of ones that I'm going to talk about here. Now we're going to get into the 5 worst things about Necromunda, and some of these are kind of mirrored from the good things, I suppose, in some ways. So the first thing we're going to talk about here is rules bloat and the whereabouts of rules as well. So on the flip side to talking about how well supported the game has been by Games Workshop, we do actually have what's called rules bloat now. So what that means is there are too many books, too many rules, and just too much stuff going on. It's really, really hard for new players to get into the game when they don't know where the core rules actually are. Different versions of rules get released in different books, and now we're up to a whopping, I don't even know, it's about 20 hardback books now off the top of my head, which is an awful amount of stuff. So where do you really begin as a new player? It's kind of daunting, I suppose, and you know, to have some way not to have to go leafing through books every single time you play and add another couple of hours onto each session that you're playing with your mates. It does really interrupt the flow of the game, and it gets pretty annoying as well, to be honest. So rules bloat and whereabouts, those are some pretty big bad points there, I would say, as well. On the flip side of being a hobbyist's dream in terms of making terrain and stuff, that can also it can also be a bit of a downside as well, because it does mean that there is a reliance on terrain and storing it and having space in your house or space somewhere that you can actually store this stuff and play it, because it's all good and well having loads of scenery and stuff, but if you can't store it anywhere, then that's going to create problems in your life. Also, you know, the setup and pack down sort of time that it does take does impact on your sort of playing time as well. So there is that to consider too. But just, yeah, I mean, the game is best played on 3D terrain, if you ask me. You can play it on the tiles, Zone Mortalis, I believe. It's just not simply as good. So But playing it on the 3D terrain really is the way to go. But that can create its own problems in terms of financial and space and all of that jazz, I suppose, as well. So the other thing is sort of limited runs of stuff, and something that I find really, really quite frustrating is that Games Workshop tend to release, particularly card packs and books. They'll release them in really small amounts, dice as well, and they'll immediately sell out on the Games Workshop website, and then they tend to either do one more print run later on down the track, or they won't do any at all, and that's really it. So you might get a card pack like the sort of Bad Zone events that I got way back, which are now going on eBay for stupid money. Unfortunately, it does mean that scalpers are out there and they'll buy a lot of these things up and then sell them a few months later on eBay for a massive profit. That's not a healthy and good thing to do. If you're Games Workshop, then you're not going to want to do that. But it's just really crap to only have access to a very small amount of new release stuff, I suppose. So it's not for everything across the board. I mean, of course, the plastic kits that you get with Necromunda are widely available generally, but stuff like the Ogryns that came in a gang of 6, then got split into packs of 2 at a much higher price. The Underhive Scum as well was a bit of a problem there, where they had an entire gang box and now they have 4 in a box. Things like that happen too, which just creates a bit of frustration on my part anyway. So there you go. The next thing is campaign snowballing and the amount of credits that you currently get in the iteration of the game. I think for anybody who's played the old version of Necromunda N95, there was a lot less credits and a lot less money in the game. Unfortunately, I would say, and I'm kind of with a few people on this, that the current sort of paramilitary outfit feel of Necromunda gangs currently in many of the campaign settings is a bit off-putting and kind of ruins that initial lore that I loved so much about the original Necromunda in 95. It was supposed to be about real bottom-of-the-barrel dregs of society that were warring over absolutely nothing, really, with very simple equipment, clubs and stub guns. Now everybody's got a heavy plasma cannon, and it's kind of like the sort of there's just too much money in it, I feel, and a lot of the campaign systems in the current iteration of the game also just have too much reliance on credits, and what that means is that gangs tend to snowball a little bit. What I mean by that is that early on in a campaign, usually by game 2 or 3, you'll have one gang that has won all their first games, and you'll have one gang that has lost all their first games. And as a result, things don't really level out much unless an arbitrator has real sound ways of dealing with that, being able to actually level the playing field a little bit. Otherwise, that gang that tends to win the first few games tends to be dominating the entire campaign, and it's just no fun for the minnows in the campaign as well. And to be honest, it's probably not much fun for the top gangs either when there's not much competition, because everybody in their gang's got a plasma gun. So that's something that really annoys me about the current iteration of the game. And as an arbitrator, luckily I'm in a position where I can create my own ways of leveling the playing field in campaigns, picking and choosing little bits and stripping it back to make it slightly more for the paupers in the game as well. The last thing I would say, and number 5 in the sort of bad things about the current Necromunda, is the sort of rules inconsistency and the constant erratas as well, and just the poor proofreading from Games Workshop, quite frankly. It's all good having support, but when your support is badly written and nobody seems to check it and edit it properly, then that's a real problem for me. And the inconsistency level in Necromunda, I suppose, is very, very high. Sure, there's an awful lot of stuff coming out. I don't know how many words they will have written in the current iteration of Necromunda, but it's an awful lot across those hardback books. But there's so much inconsistency. The way that things are written is often confusing, particularly for new players, and there are people who abuse the rules as written when they clearly know what rules as intended should be. So the inconsistency is pretty high in the current Necromunda setting as well. And I just wish they would employ somebody at Games Workshop who would actually go through every single book before they actually release it to the public and actually check things for consistency, because that clearly is not happening, and it's been happening in Games Workshop stuff for God knows how long, and it happens in every single area of the business as well. So I'm sorry, but it's true. But yeah, the constant erratas as well. It's great that they are errataing things. It's great that you're getting a free errata just to clarify what this inconsistency, what this rule actually meant. But they shouldn't have to keep doing this if they actually do their jobs properly in the first instance and actually proofread it properly. Yeah, anyway, that's my rant over. That was my top 5 and bottom 5, I suppose, things about Necromunda that I think everybody should have a little bit of something to say on that. So please do, again, comment down below and let me know if I'm way off the mark with some of that stuff. But it'll be interesting to hear what you're going to say on all this. But for now, that's enough from me. So peace out.